Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Friday. Finally made it to the weekend here. About 12 o'clock, 12:16 p.m. here, California time, August 2nd, 2024. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.7 out there around western Texas. Also some movement there in Southern California, where we're just seeing a three-pointer come in there to the Salton City area. Looks like a 3.3 to be exact, along with a couple other smaller quakes here. This could be a start of a little swarm sequence. We'll have to keep an eye on this. Of course, this is on the Pacific side here of the plate boundary, which is in this dark red line. That is the San Andreas Fault. Pretty close in relation to this little swarm kicking off here, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that as always. Of course, this fault system, this plate boundary here, well overdue in terms of producing that major release that's been built up here for so long across the southern portion of the state. Each day, each hour, each second gets a little bit closer to that big one popping off here in Southern California. So keep an eye on this area. Got a little bit of swarming going on. Some movement up north as well across the San Jacinto Fault Zone. It's the little section here that branches off of the plate boundary. Fairly large fault system. That, and along with the Elsinore Fault over here, accumulate quite a bit of the strain and slip that occurs between the North American and the Pacific plate. But as always, it's not the plate boundary itself. It's this area over here that's building up quite a bit of strain. As far as anything above the 2.5 level, of course, we got that 3.3 and a 2.6, and a handful of smaller quakes out there as well through the area today. Bay Area, Northern California, fairly quiet. The Delta here near Antioch got a 2.0. Looks like that's just off the Vaca Fault Zone. This area has seen a little bit of earthquake activity over the last week or so, mainly just to the north of today's little movement. Had a little clustering going on here last week, including a 3.3. But today, a little bit of movement further south there across the area. Clear Lake Volcanic Field, that's almost always happening on any given day. Got the hydrothermal plants out there that's in full swing. That, they utilize the whole process here to create some energy. They take advantage of the heated areas below to create some steam, to power, to create power, and of course, eventually powering up quite a few homes out there across the bay. The rest of the area, pretty quiet through the Pacific Northwest. One earthquake out here on the northern end of the Juan de Fuca Ridge. Of course, this is a spreading seafloor center. This area has seen quite a bit of earthquake activity here in the last 30 days, and I think even prior to that. It's right there in that area that's seen a whole bunch of fives, including a 6-pointer. But today, just a little bit of movement. 4.1, about 6 miles there underneath the oceanic crust. Throughout the Intermountain West area, got a little bit of movement out around Wyoming. 3.1, about 3 o'clock this morning. I guarantee you that earthquake's going to show up on Yellowstone. Let's go check it out here real quick. See if their website is working. It may not. Well, there we go. It is. So there's a 3-pointer, fairly obvious out here on the seismograph stations here. That's going to be it right here. Showed up across numerous seismograph stations there in Yellowstone right here as well. As far as local seismic activity, there's not a whole lot going on here in terms of local earthquake movement. Got one little localized earthquake here in that well-defined spike, but that's about it. No major activity there across the Yellowstone supervolcano for now. Western Texas out in the oil fields getting hit with some earthquake activity. Also the New Madrid seismic zone, a 1.8 out there in the Missouri area, striking early this morning, about 2 o'clock my time here in California. California time, that is. As far as Hawaii goes, what's going on out there in the Hawaii area? Getting some movement out across the lower east rift zone, and of course the deeper activity here in the Pahala region. So let's go see what's happening out there real quick. And for that, we need to go to the Volcano hazard site here from the USGS. The volcano still sitting at a yellow and advisory. There's some of that earthquake activity stretching a little bit further south here over the last couple days. Handful of smaller quakes out there in the last 12 hours as noted on this seismograph station here. Really nothing of any major movement for now, but we're still quite pressurized out here across the entire area of the Upper East Rift Zone. And the summit area as well is starting to inflate. I don't know if that's some back building going on from the previous inflation or the previous displacement of magma from the summit area off to the Upper East Rift Zone. That magma intrusion maybe back building a little bit there, but it's hard to say. Either way, the summit area and Upper East Rift Zone starting to go back up following that magma displacement there that happened back in the towards the end of July. All right, as far as global activity goes, let's see what we got across the planet. Typical movement out there across the Middle America Trench and South America regions. Nothing big going on. Got some deeper activity once again into the Tonga Trench and the Kermadec Trench here today. Solomon Islands area still awfully quiet within this little segment. We've seen a deeper 4.6 here last night into the New Guinea area. That's going to be this quake right here. North of the Solomon Sea, there's a little subduction zone area right here along that plate boundary. It's a trench and somewhat deep earthquake there, 97 miles for that 4.6. Still, though, that leaves this area roughly about here down to the Santa Cruz Islands area, lacking any type of earthquake activity here in the last couple weeks or so, and it should fill in. It's been awfully quiet there recently. Pair of earthquakes down there in the Indian Ocean, it looks like. See what we got. Down along the southeast Indian Ridge. This map here showing one 5-pointer. Got two of them up there on the globe. It may be just a duplicate there, one from the USGS, one from the EMSC model. But aside from that, you know, it's earthquake activity over here, and that's common on any given day out here in the crunch zone. I call it the crunch zone because this area sees a lot of stress here from all the plates generally pointing in that direction to create one big crunch area where there's always a lot of earthquake activity, subduction zones, strike slips, volcanoes, all happening here within this area. Some movement up around the China area. Let's see here, double check that. Well, that's up in Kazakhstan area, eastern area. It looks like 4.8. And a little bit of earthquake activity south of there as well. One earthquake on the Kuril Kamchatka. Look at that, 4.5 here, right smack dab on that plate boundary. Still watching this region here. This is a major subduction zone area that's capable of producing some mega quakes here. And man, it's just been awfully quiet. And this area has an extremely high slip rate in terms of accumulation along this major subduction zone. It doesn't take hundreds and hundreds of years for strain to build up to produce enough energy for a big quake out there, and it's been a little while. So keep an eye there on the Kuril Kamchatka. There's the earthquake there in Italy from yesterday. See if we got anything else going on here. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. Let's go check out Iceland here because I know we're getting quite inflated out there in this area in terms of the next volcanic eruption. Look at that. We got quite a bit of earthquake activity out here in general across the entire rift zone down here, including just northwest here of Grindavik. Got the Blue Lagoon and the power plant, Savartsingi power plant right here, Blue Lagoon over here. Most of our previous eruptions confined to this area around the craters. Of course, during one of the previous early eruptions, we had a fissure open up here inside the berm, the protected berm area, just north here of town. And actually, some of the lava flow made it into town and burned a couple houses here. Now, I can't remember exactly how many, but there's always that likelihood here. We could see another magma intrusion down here across this area and ultimately leading to an eruption across Grindavik. Got to watch this. Got some earthquake activity out there today. Let's go see what's going on from the Icelandic Met Office here, see if they put out any type of update. And of course, this is translated from Icelandic to English, so the wording may be a little off. So if you hear me pronounce something or mix in some words that are a little odd, it's just because of the translation here. So this was put out today. Increased probability of magma flow and even an eruption in the coming days. So according to the model calculations here, enough pressure has built up in the system to trigger a new event literally in the coming days. So watch the earthquake activity. We're really going to see that ramp up leading up to almost immediately, within probably about a 30-minute, maybe an hour at the most time frame between that elevated earthquake activity and an eruption or a magma displacement somewhere. Right now, I don't see all that huge elevated earthquake activity. There's a handful of them, but we're talking about hundreds of earthquakes that would come in prior to and leading up to that eruption there. So, got to keep an eye on that area as well. The National Weather Service's response plans assume that a magma run or a magma intrusion could start at any time in the next few days, and it could even end in the eruption. If the sequence of events is similar to that of previous eruptions, the warning may be short, as I just stated. Space weather activity? Well, we are sizzling here with M flares. Last night, we were almost consistently in the M flare category. That's quite rare to see that. In fact, if you look over the last couple days here, we've been sizzling in the M flare category. M flare is going to be right here, so that's going to stretch across this entire upper area of the graph. C flare down below in this area. X flare, not so much, but when we're sizzling here with all this M flare activity, that's a sign there of a lot of unstable sunspots, and that's when we get that some large flare activity. We've seen a lot of large M flares here over the last couple days. Probably too many to count right now. Yesterday when I did the update, I counted about 20 of them, so there's probably another 10 more. Or, yeah, probably at least 10 more on there. Quite a bit, folks. 7 days for the 7-day activity here shows all that elevated space weather activity here happening on the sun, right? We're entering in the solar maximum, so, well, it should be uptick, right? It should be uptick in space weather, and that's what's happening. Solar maximum expected in the next year, next summer. Roughly about July or so is when we're supposed to see the peak of it. So here's our current sunspot number progression and our solar flux progression. This is the energy with all the sunspots out here. We are at a level well above here. This is the sunspot number progression, well above the forecasted area, and we still haven't even peaked out yet. Look at the last couple months. We've really gone up. 2024 started off with a bang, and it's continuing. There was a little period here back in March, I think it was, that was a little quiet, but now we're going way up in terms of the number of sunspots that are producing all that energy out here on the solar flux progression as well. So peak event is expected again sometime next year, next summer. We'll see how this plays out, folks. All right, so we do have a couple things to mention here. Obviously, the elevated threat for the X flare at 25% chance, 75 for the M flare. Again, we're pretty much sizzling there with M flares. Detailed forecast here for the Auroras calls for a potential for a G2 class solar storm. Now, that could bring Auroras down into some of the northern tier states or possibly lower. Let's see what we got. Here's tonight's forecast, KP index of around 4. It looks like maybe tomorrow night may be a little bit better in terms of the Aurora potential as far as the viewing goes. KP index of around 5 or so. And looking at this chart here, 2100 to 00, that's KP index up around the 6th level. We'll have to see how this plays out. But over the next couple nights, we got a decent shot of seeing some auroras down across some of the lower lower levels here of the northern tier states, maybe down into the Central Plains area. It's all dependent on if that plasma cloud that the sun shot off, that CME, that massive amount of energy that was produced from that recent solar flare activity, is squarely lined up with Earth. It could go north of us, it could go south of us, it could go east of us, west of us. You know, it could go either way. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And of course, we'll provide updates when the event starts to take place. A look at the magnetogram image here of the complexity of the sunspots shows still quite a bit of active regions out here. Notice this active region that's produced many M flares recently is scooting further off across the western limb of the sun. We're left with, well, right now it's still a threat. If we get any activity out here, it could be somewhat a little bit Earth-directed, pending we get a full halo CME if something were to blast off from here. But we got a couple newer sunspots here that poses some M and maybe some X flare potential. This one down here looks fairly active. Now, a lot of these sunspots are former sunspots that have gone around the bend a couple times here. It's hard to keep track of which sunspots are which. But they get renamed. You know, some of these may not be new sunspots at all, but they have evolved through their process around the back side of the sun there, the far side of the sun. And, you know, no telling how many times they come around. They go around multiple times, I feel. But, again, it's so hard to keep track of all of these sunspot numbers, but they get renamed. As soon as they disappear across the western limb, and travel back around the far side of the sun and reappear on the eastern limb, they get renamed with an entirely new sunspot number. So it's hard to keep track of them. Either way, keep your eyes open there. We got some flare threats in the coming days. What do we got here for the severe weather activity out here? Not a whole lot today. We got some monsoonal moisture coming in from the south here in Northern California. Well, that can be somewhat beneficial for fires out here, but in the same line of things, we get those lightning strikes with somewhat limited moisture in these thunderstorms, and that's what can create these big fires out here in Northern California. So that may not be an entirely good thing out here for California to see this monsoonal moisture, because it'd be okay if there was no lightning associated with the thunderstorms, but there's going to be lightning, and with everything dry out there right now, all it's going to take is a couple more lightning strikes to create another big fire. Marginal risk for some severe weather out there across the eastern portion of the country. Not a huge threat for tornado. In fact, less than 2% chances there across all areas. It looks like just a little bit of wind from these thunderstorms and maybe a small hail threat out there in eastern Colorado area. All right, hurricane activity. That's another one here. Let me show you guys what's going on here across the Gulf area. Keep an eye on the Florida area as we put this model run into motion. We got some type of tropical disturbance trying to form here. Now, this is a GFS model. Watch this tropical storm system that's going to make it into a hurricane status there along the east coast. And it looks to be rather strong, at least according to this weather model, and basically just buzzsaw a portion of the states here as it makes its way further to the north and east. We'll have to watch that. There's a little uncertainty on it right now. Let's go check out the potential models here in terms of what they're thinking is going to happen. Here's a couple of the global and hurricane forecast models. These are all pretty much in agreement right now, but subject to change, right? It's all subject to change. It does show pretty much what I had just shown you guys there on the GFS model run. A little northwestward turn here, and then heads off. Gets a little bit stronger here off the coast of these states, and then gets caught up there in the jet stream and the patterns. Uncertain, though, on complete model guidance. Some of these, if you look at the GEPS tracks and other various weather models, it shows a more westward turn here. Couple spinning off a little bit further to the west. So it's just one of those things here where we have to watch it closely, right? Here is the potential strength of this hurricane. Now, when it gets to Florida, probably not going to be all that much. It'd probably be a tropical storm. maybe. But it is expected to remain, it looks like, maybe a tropical storm. Some models are forecasting up around a Category 1 strength hurricane, maybe Category 2 up here. But again, this is all subject to change here, folks. Let me go over here and bring up the windy map. And we also got, some tropical systems down here in the eastern Pacific. This one, I think, is going to dissipate, get caught up in this massive high pressure ridging and just basically get squashed. But this is the area of interest there in the Bahamas right now, that tropical wave. As we put this into a little bit further into motion there, you can see a little bit of circulation forming around that tropical wave. It's going to, or tropical depression, and eventually it's going to make its way into a tropical storm. And then head north, get caught up in the patterns a little bit, and then potentially recharge here. This is going to be an interesting area to watch because it is over land there for a little bit, and it could be sucking in some of this air off of the land that may not be beneficial for that tropical system, but we'll have to watch it because it does show some rapid development once it sits off the coast here of South Carolina area. Could be a damaging storm. So, and that's the ECMWF model. The GFS, I think, painted about the same picture. Let's go back here a little bit. Roughly about the same. Remember a couple days ago, I think it was the ECMWF model that showed it hitting New Orleans here. So it just, let's see what the icon system shows here. Shows roughly about the same thing. So New Orleans, it looks like out of the clear due to the current surface conditions and the wind and whatnot, keeping that tropical system over here to the east. But we'll have to watch that. Either way, some type of hurricane is forecasted out here across portions of the southeastern states here, South Carolina, North Carolina, and of course Florida, right? That's, this whole system's going to go right over Florida, the Panhandle area. And it's hard to say how strong it's going to be here, folks, but it could be something to watch here. Just be prepared. I believe there's some type of hurricane or tropical system watches out here. Let's go check this out real quick. The Atlantic. There's number 4. Okay, so right now, it's at a tropical depression here. Potential tropical cyclone 4. Maximum sustained winds here at about 30 miles per hour. Moving off to the west-northwest at about 16 miles per hour here. And that is a depression around Cuba. Runs into a tropical storm here in the western coast of Florida. So we do have tropical storm watches, tropical storm watches up right now. They're in the yellow. Tropical storm warning in the blue right here, a little bit further up the coast of Florida, western coast, and then tropical storm watch again further up north. So we'll continue to watch that and report back on it. It's one of those things here where it's obviously not a fully developed hurricane as it's entering into the Gulf here. It's more of a tropical disorganized wave that's starting to form, but it's got interference out here. You got land, you got it's not spending a whole lot of time over the open water, so that may be good in terms of this thing staying on a low level side of a tropical system. Alrighty, folks, have a good Friday. It is Friday. Again, we got a little bit of moisture coming in. It's actually a little sticky out here in Northern California right now. Of course, being around the rice fields, it's always sticky because we got that sun beating down on the water, and not good. So a little bit of shower activity here, limited to the foothills and Sierra Nevada mountains. Let's see here. Let me go back. This is all pushing in from the east-southeast, it looks like. Put this into motion here and see. Look at this little wave here drying up as it enters into the valley here. I don't expect any type of rain across the valley, but we do have thunderstorm threats out here across the Sierra Nevada mountains. So hopefully no fires start, but it's good to see some rain showers, right? But as always, there's that lightning potential out here. Have a good day, folks. We'll catch you guys back out here for the Friday night update. Take care.